I think what might surprise some people is, especially in our region, Lana, is the amount of clinical trial activity that's going on outside of the US and particularly in the Asia Pac region. I think we have a lot of activity in China and South Korea, particularly in early phase. And I think that just reflects the kind of biotech and pharma activity around biologics in a general sense. I think it's because of the way the science has progressed around immunomodulators, both novel targets and pathways, as well as biosimilars. I think it, just like what I just mentioned, it'll be twofold that way. Continued sort of innovation around immunomodulating targets within the interleukin pathways, the TNF pathways, the interferon pathways, right, and the JAK-STAT pathways, but also around biosimilars. I think that's something that the biosimilar market hasn't really delivered on what we'd, as an industry, had hoped, more price competition, more affordability and accessibility in your developing markets, and lower costs in your established markets. But I think that there's a general sense that we're going to catch up with that, and those biosimilars are going to deliver what we hope eventually. So I think development is going to continue in that space. I think, with the introduction of these sorts of biologics and immunomodulators that are biologic, right? That has been such a game changer for both physicians and patients, right? In the ability to positively impact diseases like rheumatoid arthritis. And because of their efficacy, and also because of the way in the US that's reimbursed, right? I mean, they're quite expensive, but if the indication is, or if the condition warrants their use, they generally get reimbursed, right? So all of that is to say, patients who've been struggling to find something that really works for them are really reticent to switch things up for fear of, what if I backtrack? What if I have a recurrence or a flare? And that, from a patient perspective, when you've tried so many, I mean, a lot of this stuff is trial and error. Maybe we're going to do a little methotrexate. Maybe we're going to add a steroid, right? And then you finally get on a regimen that is working for you. Having a breakthrough in terms of symptoms is really devastating or discouraging, right? So people, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it kind of thing. But I think that there's more awareness of the data that show we're really seeing comparable safety and efficacy, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the development pathway with the health authorities for biosimilars. So I think as people, it's like a circle. The more that people adopt the biosimilars, the more there's both anecdotal and hard evidence of comparable safety and efficacy, the more that's gonna take off. But I think there's a lot to overcome in terms of nervousness, that, switching things up is gonna adversely affect their symptomatology. It's sort of like a rising tide floats all boats. I think the innovation, both in providing biosimilars that can make therapies more accessible, but also, we've gotten, as a scientific and medical community, we're getting more and more sophisticated. TNF alpha inhibitors were such a big deal when they came on the scene, and Humira commands a huge market, right? But then there's a little more precision in what downstream from that pathway, or what immunomodulators adjacent to that pathway could also have an impact. So as we continue to get more sophisticated there, I think it's sort of a precision medicine story, Lana, that, we were targeting this, but actually when you look at this specific disease process and pathogenesis, if we are able to pinpoint a little better what's the most impactful sort of target, then that's the upside is going to be efficacy with less safety or side effect, cost, if you like. You can think of it like corticosteroids. I mean, we use those across many different inflammatory and autoimmune conditions, but truthfully, we don't exactly know how that works, right? And it's sort of a shotgun approach of, suppress the inflammation. But I think we're getting much more specific around in which disease process, what particular arm of inflammation do we want to target? And I think that's going to benefit patients going forward, just to be more precise about targeting the pathways that are meaningful in a particular disease process. It's hard to say, right? I mean, what we just discussed is a lot to overcome. But that being said, I think as our healthcare reimbursement system progresses, there's going to be more appetite to push people to more cost-effective therapies. And on that, coupled with the data we just discussed, Alana, suggests to me that price pressure plus an acceptance of, robust data will push us towards, the goal of biosimilars, which is to introduce competition and decrease prices for patients. And, the payers are heavily invested in that. So they have a heavy hand in influencing how that goes.